Welcome to the Formula Bone F1 Show's 2022 Canadian Grand Prix recap. I'm Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Let's get into it, folks. J-Bone! On my Canadian Grand Prix preview podcast, I gave you 4 storylines to follow throughout the race weekend. Let's see how those shaped up. The first storyline was, can Ferrari snap out of it and return to glory at the Canadian Grand Prix? While Ferrari certainly started off on the back foot, with Charles Leclerc taking a big, fat grid penalty and starting the race P19, and with Carlos Sainz missing out on starting the race on the front row due to a tiny mistake at the end of qualifying, Ferrari's Canadian Grand Prix weekend was a masterclass in damage control relative to Red Bull, if not a return to glory, which, to be clear, was certainly not a return to glory, but it was definitely a step forwards rather than backwards. First off, Ferrari definitely lucked out as far as Saturday's weather is concerned, with the rainy qualifying causing Checo to hit a barrier, get out of his car, go for a nice mid-session hike in the woods, and then qualify P13, meaning both Red Bull and Ferrari would have a driver racing from pretty far down the grid on Sunday. Ferrari lucked out even more as Checo proceeded to suffer a mechanical issue while running in 10th place during the Grand Prix that caused him to have to retire his car. Just a nightmare weekend for Checo, sadly, just a few short weeks after we were all hyping him up to be the 2022 World Drivers' Champion. I think we all jinxed him, I'll be honest with you. I think all of us, collectively, jinxed Checo and caused this Canadian Grand Prix result. Both of those moments of Checo misfortune, plus Charles Leclerc going from P19 on the starting grid to finishing P5, and Carlos Sainz coming this close to winning the race, but settling for P2 with fastest lap, ended up meaning that Ferrari left Canada with 5 more World Constructors' Championship points than Red Bull did, a result that I can guarantee you they would have taken if you had offered it to them right after they had resigned Leclerc to his grid penalty. Overall, it was a positive weekend for Ferrari as a whole, and definitely for Carlos Sainz more individually. As far as Leclerc goes, I'm sure he'll take his P5 result after starting P19, but there was a big mistake Ferrari made in Canada that screwed over Leclerc once again that I will be going over later on this episode, so definitely stay tuned for that. Speaking of Carlos Sainz, though, the second storyline was, will we see a first-time race winner at the Canadian Grand Prix? We came so close to the Canadian Grand Prix producing another first-time race winner on Sunday by way of Carlos Sainz. However, in the end, Carlos Sainz narrowly lost the Canadian Grand Prix to Max Verstappen by less than a second, and the reason why is because of another Ferrari strategy error. Carlos Sainz was leading the race on 34-lap-old hard tires and lucked out big time when a full safety car was called out that would allow him to do a cheap pit stop for fresh tires with just 21 laps remaining in the race. The timing of this was amazing for Sainz, as it would allow him to pit for fresh tires and then come out of the pit lane bunched up right behind Max for the race restart on tires that were 6 laps fresher than Max's. However, Ferrari messed up when they decided to put hard tires on Carlos's car instead of the faster medium tires. The reason Ferrari did this is because they saw some decent tire degradation during the 20-lap medium tire stint that Carlos did earlier in the race that made them believe that the hards would be superior here, given how 21 laps were left remaining in the race. However, Max Verstappen, whom Carlos would be attempting to overtake in order to win the race, was also on the hard tires, meaning that Ferrari were significantly lessening the tire advantage Carlos could have had over Max had they put the medium tires on him, because A, they aren't giving Carlos the pace advantage of being on a faster tire compound than Max, and B, the hard tires degrade so slowly that Max's 6 extra laps on them would not grant Sainz's new hards that much of an advantage over Max's used hards. Sainz provided some great insight into Ferrari's decision-making after the race to Germany's Auto Motor und Sport, saying, quote, "In hindsight, maybe we should have tried the mediums. We didn't expect the safety car to stay out for so long, and that would have reduced the remaining kilometers to be driven. In 16 laps, the medium would probably have been the better tire, and I would have had a better chance to attack Max," end quote. Whether it was because they thought the safety car would come in sooner, because they wanted to play it safe and finish P2 at the worst, or because of a simple error in strategy, Ferrari went the less aggressive route, and it resulted in them not getting more much-needed points, nor earning Carlos Sainz his first ever F1 victory. Sad. The third storyline was, will Red Bull's run of podium dominance continue? And it did not. Red Bull did finish atop the podium with Max finishing P1, but only occupied one spot on the podium because Checo DNF'd. And this is the first time since Miami that this is the case, where they've only had one driver on the podium. Nice little run Red Bull's been having. Some podium dominance came to a little bit of an end. You're still kind of dominating the podium, finishing P1, but you're dominating the top middle of it, you know? Still leaving a little room on the sides, on the wings there. P2 was, of course, occupied by Carlos Sainz, with Lewis Hamilton getting P3 and making just his second appearance on the podium this season. This was also just the second race all season that Lewis outperformed his teammate George Russell, who somehow has still not finished outside the top 5 all season long, finishing P4 in Canada. Mr. Consistency, George Russell, is an absolute beast and is still my driver of the 2022 season thus far. The final storyline was, we must all come together on Sunday and vote Nicholas Latifi for driver of the day at the Canadian Grand Prix. I demand that an impartial third party audit Formula One's driver of the day voting, because I find it impossible to believe that not only did Nicholas Latifi not win driver of the day in Canada, but that he didn't even finish in the top 5 of the official voting. Formula One claim that Leclerc received 21.6% of the vote, Hamilton 11.9%, Sainz 10.6%, Max 10.2%, and Alonso 6%, to which I respond that that is 100% BS. I have never seen as much excitement and buzz on social media surrounding driver of the day voting as I did this past weekend, and literally all of it was people saying how they voted for Nicholas Latifi. I'd believe Formula One if they said Latifi finished second or third, but I refuse to believe he did not receive at least 6.1% of the vote, okay? This strikes me as Formula One trying to avoid a Bodie McBoatface situation where the internet takes control of a poll that they want to more closely fit their narrative. But I have bad news for them. Internet gonna internet, okay? So if you want to know who our driver of the day is, you need to accept it for better or for Gotifi. Oh man, I'm heated up about that if you can't tell. What an injustice. Real quick, before we keep going, if you're enjoying the Formula Bone F1 show and want to help me grow the show, as well as be notified whenever I release new Formula One content, I would really, really appreciate it if you could take 10 seconds right now and subscribe to my YouTube channel and then ring that notification bell to turn on all Formula Bone notifications. My Canadian Grand Prix preview episode was actually my most watched episode ever, and I'm really, really trying to keep that ball rolling with this episode so I can continue to grow my audience and make even more F1 content for you all. I'm also trying to get 600 likes on this video episode in an attempt to make that happen if you're able to help me out with that as well. Thank you all so much for the support. It really means the world to me. Thank you so much for being here. J-Bone! All right, now here are a couple additional storylines that came up throughout the race weekend that have not been covered yet and won't be covered by way of the upcoming listener voicemails. First up, my HDS, or Haas delusion syndrome, was back in full effect on Saturday after Haas was the only constructor to have 2 drivers qualify in the top 6 at the Canadian Grand Prix. It was then completely cured come Sunday as neither driver finished in the points. K-Mag was shown a black and orange flag and had to endure a long, unscheduled pit stop to repair his front wing after a slight collision with Lewis Hamilton early on in the race, and he never got back into the points afterwards. Now, Kevin Magnussen believes that the damage didn't warrant the flag, and I tend to agree only because I'm suffering from the effects of long Haas-Delusion syndrome. And Mick, poor Mick. He had a power unit issue while running in 7th, 18 laps into the race to, against all odds, once again avoid finishing in the points. I feel so bad for Mick. Can F1 just gift him free points via like an F1 battle pass type situation or something? Because I want him to get points so badly, and it's just not happening. When's his birthday? Okay? Let's all chip in and buy Mick some points. And finally, the word L in El Plan was replaced with the letter L at the Canadian Grand Prix as Fernando Alonso went from starting on the front row for the first time in 10 years to officially classifying P9 after finishing the race P7, then receiving a 5-second penalty for weaving on the straights. It's believed Alonso suffered an ERS deployment issue that caused him to lose a second per lap for the final 51 laps of the race, which is not what you're looking for. I was so excited to see Alonso fight for a spot on the podium, but it just was not meant to be, turning El Plan into El Pain. Speaking of pain, there's nothing more painful and embarrassing than sending that email or message or tweet and realizing right after you hit send that you made a big grammatical or spelling mistake in it. Whether it's in your professional or personal life, when you're moving fast and juggling more projects than you can count, you don't have time for breakdowns in communication. Luckily, Grammarly makes professional writing fast and simple. It's an all-in-one writing tool that helps you churn out clear, concise communication quicker than ever. Grammarly is 100% free to download as a desktop app and works where you do, so you can work more efficiently on all your projects. It's seriously life-changing. I personally used Grammarly all throughout college to make sure my essays, reports, and term papers were all written in a professional and grammatically correct manner, and I still use Grammarly to this day when I write my podcast rundowns. Even if you're not a college student or podcaster, I promise that you will still have so much use for Grammarly because it makes writing emails, resumes, job applications, you name it, so much easier and stress-free. One example of an amazing free feature that Grammarly has is their tone detector, which helps your writing sound just the way you want, whether that's friendly but not overly casual with a colleague, or concerned but not angry when asking someone for help. And if you love the free version of Grammarly with its writing tools and tone detector, and then upgrade to Grammarly Premium, you can take advantage of unbelievable premium features like clarity-focused sentence rewrites and tone transforms, where Grammarly does the work for you. Get to the point faster and accomplish more with Grammarly. Go to grammarly.com/fbone to sign up for a free account. And when you're ready to upgrade to Grammarly Premium, get 20% off for being my listener as long as you signed up for your free account with my URL. That's 20% off at grammarly.com/fbone. At the very least, just go to grammarly.com/fbone and sign up for a completely free account and try out their amazing product free of charge. You have nothing to lose, you'll be supporting the Formula Bone F1 show, and I guarantee you'll love their product. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Grammarly for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. Of course, I need to now check in with you all regarding how my 3 bona fide race predictions fared at the Canadian Grand Prix. And it was not great, folks. Was not great one bit. My first race prediction was that Charles Leclerc would get his 5th pole position in a row and his 7th of the 2022 season at the Canadian Grand Prix, but then finished the race in P2. You can see why that was a problem. After it looked like Leclerc would be getting a 10-place grid penalty, I amended this prediction on social media to just Charles Leclerc would get pole position, okay? And of course, after I did that, it was then announced he'd be starting P19 regardless of his qualifying position after taking additional new engine components, making it pointless for him to attempt to be on pole, and killing this prediction dead before qualifying even started. So I was automatically down 1 before qualifying even started. My second race prediction was that Max Verstappen would win the Canadian Grand Prix, and ding ding, J-Bone got that one right. J-Bone! It's the only one I got right. Because, well, you'll see. Max looked amazing out there all weekend long, and I don't think anyone is surprised that he won, especially with Leclerc starting from P19, but I still got it right, so please clap. My third and final race prediction was that both Aston Martins would finish in the points of the Canadian Grand Prix, and I got this one half right as Lance Stroll strolled his way to a smooth P10 to earn Aston Martin's lone Canadian Grand Prix point. Despite looking amazing during practice sessions, Vettel had a nightmare qualifying and a nothing burger of a race to end his 2-race points finish streak. Going 1.5 for 3 on my bona fide race predictions is pretty bad, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, not going to do a spin zone. It's bad, not going to lie. But guess what, folks? I can feel it in my J-bones that the British Grand Prix is where I will finally go 3 for 3 on my bona fide race predictions. Book it, baby. J-Bone! Next up, it is time to respond to some Canadian Grand Prix themed voicemails left by Formula Bone F1 show listeners on the Bone phone. If you're new to the Formula Bone F1 show, welcome. After every race this season, I do one of these race recap podcasts, and a large part of them is me responding to questions, comments, hot takes, concerns, and more left by Formula Bone F1 show listeners on the Bone phone. The phone number for which is 1-833-200-0966. And big announcement, you asked and J-Bone listened, there is now another way to submit your voicemails other than calling the Bone phone, which my international audience will hopefully find is much easier for them. I have created a channel in the Formula Bone Discord server where you can submit voice memos directly from your phone rather than calling the hotline number. Check it out via the Discord invite link in the description of this episode. Let me know what you think. Send your Bone phone messages there, and I'd love to hear from you. So during or after each race, whenever you have an interesting thought, hot take, complaint, or anything else like that, make sure to hit up the Bone phone or the Formula Bone Discord for a chance at your email being played on the podcast. Without further ado, here is the first call.
Hey, it's Tuck from Cali. As far as drivers go, who's your biggest winner and your biggest loser from the Canadian Grand Prix?
My biggest Canadian Grand Prix winner is Zhou Guanyu. After getting absolutely screwed over by car reliability issues lately in the form of 3 DNF results in the 4 Grand Prix preceding this one, the Alfa Romeo rookie was given a good car and achieved great results in it. He reached his first career Q3 on Saturday, eventually qualifying P10, and then turned that into a fantastic P8 on Sunday. Of course, slightly assisted by Fernando Alonso's 5-second penalty, but it was going to be a P9 without that, so still a phenomenal result, made even better by Fernando Alonso. Zhou, once again, is proving he is much more than the paid driver many people thought he was when he entered the sport. Now, my biggest Canadian Grand Prix loser has to be Checo. From his nightmare qualifying session that included an embarrassing lesson on how to reverse, being broadcast to the entire world, to his hike through the forest, to his mechanical DNF just 7 laps into the Grand Prix, this is a Grand Prix that Checo will want to forget as soon as possible, as it has just dealt a massive, massive blow to his title hopes. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone, this is Matt from Rhode Island. New to Formula One. Had a quick question. Who is the 4th guy on the podium? The dude in the Red Bull gear. Thanks. Probably a stupid question, but thanks anyway.
Matt, there are no stupid questions, only stupid, rigged driver of the day votes. Every Formula One podium celebration features 4 award winners: the winning driver, second place driver, third place driver, and a representative of the winning constructor who is up there to accept an award on behalf of the constructor for building the car that won the race. Teams that win a lot will rotate the team member who gets to accept the award around the team, seemingly as like a perk of sorts, I guess, while teams who win infrequently will usually send up their CEO or team principal. For example, when McLaren and Alpine each got their lone victories last season, both of them sent up their CEOs, with Zach Brown and Laurent Rossi going up there. Like I said, for podium purposes, the winning constructor is not the team that earned the most points in the race, but rather just the team that won the race. And I think we should amend that, okay? I think we should amend the rules and make it so that it's the team that scores the most points, with the tiebreaker being whichever constructor had a driver finish higher. That would be more fun than just giving 2 trophies to the race winner, in my opinion. Next call.
Hey, it's Austin from Texas, and I was wondering your thoughts on Leclerc starting 19th and moving up and finishing in 5th place in Canada.
Leclerc had a great drive at Sunday's Canadian Grand Prix, starting P19 and making his way all the way up to P5. But while it was a great drive, it was nothing mind-melting or insane, right? Remember that last season, Lewis Hamilton went from P20 to P5 in a 24-lap sprint race, which is way, way crazier than going from P19 to P5 in a 70-lap Grand Prix. And after Leclerc's engine penalty, he probably has the fastest car on the grid right now, so he was expected to easily make his way up the field during the race. Again, not taken away from him, still a great drive, but like nothing, oh my God, that was so crazy. Maybe I'm just salty that Leclerc won driver of the day over Latifi, but that's neither here nor there, okay? Now, if Leclerc had gotten on the podium from P19, then I'd be much, much more impressed. But Ferrari decided to Ferrari and deprive him of that opportunity by way of botching his second and final pit stop. This 5.3 second pit stop put Leclerc back into the race in an almost unbelievably bad spot, stuck as the caboose of a now 5-car DRS train with Stroll in front, followed by Joe, Yuki, and Danny Rick. Had Ferrari gotten Leclerc out ahead of Stroll and his train, it's believed Leclerc would have been able to fight Lewis for P3. But they did not, and it was brutal. That's it for today's episode of the Formula Bone F1 show. If you enjoyed the show and want to help me out, I'd really appreciate it if you could toss me a comment, like, subscription, rating, review, or any other form of engagement on whatever platform you are on right now, so that said platform and its algorithm like J-Bone more. I respond to pretty much every YouTube comment on my podcasts, and if you don't believe me, try it out. Speaking of YouTube, if you join the Noti gang by ringing that bell and turning on all Formula Bone YouTube notifications, I will love you forever. For Formula One updates between now and my British Grand Prix preview episode, you can join the Formula Bone Discord server via the invite link in the description of this episode, and also follow me on all social media at Formula Bone and at my real name, Jared Borislow. That's at JaredBorislow. Until next time, J-Bone!